Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the 31st Hodlnots weekly warm-up. I'm John.
I'm Vicky.
Let's get into some of the news making headlines in the crypto space over the last few days.
Yes, and as we can see, Bitcoin fell below 65,000 in the latest bout, maybe, of tariff uncertainty. It is trading above 65 at the moment, but we shall see. So Bitcoin slid in early Asia trading today, maybe prompted by fresh nervousness around the status of US tariffs. So the original digital asset slid as much as 4.8% to nearly 64,300, its lowest since February 6th. Other tokens fared worse, though, with Ethereum, the second largest token, retreating 5.2%. So the losses may have come after US officials on Sunday said trade deals already negotiated with partners remain in place, despite a Supreme Court ruling that struck down Donald Trump's use of emergency authority to impose those tariffs. In a social media post on Saturday, Trump said he would increase the global 10% tariff he announced one day earlier to 15%, stirring up more economic turbulence. So the dollar and US stock futures dropped in early trading on Monday, with contracts for the S&P 500 down 0.8% and the Nasdaq 100 down 1%. A gauge of Asian equities were also actually climbed 1%. So who knows why Bitcoin's down? That could be the reason, but we'll never know. So see it and trade it, everyone.
Well, on that note, after the tariff peak or spike increased by President Trump, crypto market did not react as much at all. It was only a few hours ago, well, about 8 hours ago, we saw that drop. Now, is the next story related? BitDeer. Some of you might know the Bitcoin mining firm has liquidated their entire Bitcoin treasury holdings, which now fall to zero. So, Bitcoin mining firm BitDeer has sold all of its corporate Bitcoin holding, reducing its treasury balance to zero, according to the company's latest operational update. In its latest weekly report, BitDeer disclosed that its pure holdings, excluding customer deposits, have fallen to zero Bitcoin. The report shows that the company produced 189.8 Bitcoin during the period and sold the full amount alongside an additional 943.1 Bitcoin, which was liquidated from its existing treasury reserves. Mining firms commonly sell a portion of production to fund electricity, hosting, and equipment costs, but they also maintain a treasury balance to keep exposure to Bitcoin's price appreciation. Fully liquidating reserves is less typical. Now, 930 plus 980, call it 1,000 Bitcoin isn't necessarily what we saw in that major drop. Maybe it's part of it, but still, just something for you guys all to be aware of. We do know that we mentioned some in the past that Bitcoin miners are now turning to AI data centers in terms of sources of revenue, but we'll see if this trend continues. More on that in another episode. Over to you.
And the next story is actually very interesting because a lot of us saw this coin the other day. So the story is a viral AI agent bans Bitcoin crypto mentions. So artificial intelligence has officially entered its uncanny era when it's equal parts revolutionary and unsettling. So one of the latest examples is OpenClaw, a viral open source AI agent framework that's captured the imagination of developers worldwide. It's designed as part of the broader movement towards autonomous agent-based systems, but what fascinates people about this actual program is the AI can actually browse the web, write code, and execute multi-step workflows with no human interaction or input almost. Now, the thing with what happened with these guys, though, is a naming dispute and a crypto frenzy nearly derailed the project entirely. In the brief window between releasing the GitHub handles and the X handles and securing new ones, which happens when they launch, Scammers hijacked the accounts and launched a fake Solana token called Claude, so CLAWD. I think a few of us saw that. So the token surged to a 16 million market cap within hours, but when the developers of OpenClaw publicly denied having any association with it, the token collapsed more than 90%, leaving late buyers with steep losses. So the aftermath, though, the developers of that have drawn a hard line on crypto altogether, and OpenClaw's Discord channels now enforce a strict ban on any mention of Bitcoin or crypto, even neutral technical contexts. So one user who referred to Bitcoin's block height as a benchmarking tool was immediately removed. However, the user was assured that that he would be unblocked soon. So that is it's an interesting story but I think they'll probably relax their ban on that shortly. Mm.
So here's another story we didn't include today, but somebody using OpenClaw, this open source AI agent framework, mistakenly sent somebody a whole bunch of tokens worth $41,000 as well. So AI gets it wrong sometimes as well, but as we've seen, everybody's susceptible to scams, phishing, and even mistakes by themselves as well. So still a steep learning curve, lots of teething. Now, what's interesting is Bitcoin, right? And, ooh, we better not get removed from this chat. Joking. 1 in 6 Bitcoin are still found on centralized exchanges despite the good old FTX collapse. Now, approximately 3 million Bitcoin worth about $200 billion and representing 15% of the circulating supply is currently held on central exchange platforms. Now, Binance obviously dominates the market, holding around 30% of all Bitcoin stored on these centralized platforms, followed by Bitfinex, Robinhood, and Upbit. The concentration of assets on trading avenues or venues reveals that despite the shock of the FTX collapse in 2022 and years of industry messaging about self-custody, about 1 out of every 6 Bitcoin in existence still remains stored with third-party intermediaries. Now, we find this interesting because in this day and age, not your keys, not your crypto, is that there's still a lot of Bitcoin circulating. And we've seen in the last couple of months, especially since October, how either the Bitcoin that is existing in those centralized platforms, or they get moved onto them, how quickly they can be liquidated or they can be sold off. So, we're hoping everybody would keep it off chain, at least in self-custodial wallets, hard wallets, cold wallets. But there's still a bit around. All right. Now, whether or not that's going to fuel, more people to sell and, Bitcoin price to go, we don't know. Like Vicky always says, we trade what we see. Moving on.
Right. So yeah, like as you said, that when you see Bitcoin being moved onto the exchanges, it does normally signal a sell-off, but we don't care. Please, everyone on the call, we don't care. We see what we trade what we see. Anyway, in the next story, Coinbase expands its crypto-backed loans to XRP, Doge, ADA, and Litecoin. So the leading crypto exchange Coinbase has officially expanded its US crypto-backed loans to accept XRP, Dogecoin, ADA, and Litecoin as collateral. So according to the announcement, eligible users can borrow up to 100,000 US dollars in USDC without selling their crypto. The company stated, you can now unlock the value of your portfolio without giving up your position. You can borrow up to 100,000 US dollars in USDC against your tokens instantly without selling. So the loans run through a company called Morpho, a decentralized lending protocol. So the loan and collateral rules are handed on chain, not from Coinbase's own balance sheet. And the service is available in most of the US, excluding New York. So for those on the call, that could actually be an interesting way to borrow money moving forward. So I'd like to see what our US members say about that, actually.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Opportunities are abounding. Now, we thought we'd include a story around strategy, or at least specifically Michael Saylor buying his or the company's 100th buy of Bitcoin, but we thought the interesting little story here. BlackRock Strategy or Coinbase? Who really holds the most Bitcoin? Now, Coinbase, Binance, and BlockRock collectively hold millions of Bitcoin, which reveals centralized power amid decentralized cryptocurrency narratives. We found this quite the interesting paradox, which we've spoken about before. Now, Bitcoin's pseudonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, remains the largest single holder of the cryptocurrency, controlling approximately 1.1 million Bitcoin. This adds up to roughly 5.5% of the total supply. At current market prices, this stake is worth around $75 billion, dollars, dwarfing the holdings of even the largest corporate and institutional players. Now, despite years of speculation about potential movement from these early mined addresses, Nakamoto's BTC has largely remained untouched since the asset's inception. Well, following Nakamoto in the rankings is the US-based exchange Coinbase, which holds 993,069 Bitcoin on-chain, equivalent to 5% of the total supply. Now, in terms of the institutional side of things, well, it's a bit of a fight, bit of a tough race between Strategy and BlackRock, but according to Arkham Intelligence, BlackRock is the largest institutional holder with 761,801 Bitcoin. All right, that stash is worth about 52 billion. Now, Strategy comes in at around 717,000 Bitcoin. Either way, this paradox is still interesting. We're supposed to be in this concept of decentralized autonomy versus centralized power and control. To all these institutions buying up, and we decentralized still? Well, you and I are still retail. As much as we don't hold Bitcoin, we might hold a few Satoshis worth. That's still the whole main narrative, despite the institutions. Over to you.
Very interesting, especially because we're not really sure who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Is he an institution? Is he a person? Don't know. But anyway, off Bitcoin for a moment, onto Ethereum, as Vitalik Buterin dumps even more Ethereum as its price struggles below $2,000 worth. So on-chain data from Arkham Intelligence again and Look on Chain showed Vitalik Buterin has resumed his selling spree of Ethereum with another multi-million-dollar transfer. So the analyst explains that he had withdrawn another batch of 3,500 Ethereum worth about 7 million at the time from Aave with the likely intention to sell. And actually, a few hours ago, he had already disposed of 571 Ethereum worth 1.13 million. So a few similar instances occurred in February in which on-chain data indicated that he had begun disposing of some of his Ethereum fortune. A February 5 report showed that the project's co-founder had sold 2,961 Ethereum worth about 6.6 million at the time in just 3 days. So that could be why Ethereum is also having a bit of problem now. Might not be. So we'll never know. Again, what can everyone say it with me? I don't have to say it anymore, do I? Trade what you see.
Yeah, it's terrible when the founder of such a project starts
Yeah.
selling. It doesn't instill investor confidence. Anyway, moving on. Speaking about confidence, and this is again part of the regular segments within the weekly warm-ups, and that's to do with security. Now, some of you might have heard of the term pig butchering crypto scams. All right, well, let's delve a little bit more into that briefly, because what they do is they turn trust into a financial weapon. So we've spoken about wrench attacks, we've spoken about poison addresses and evil twin Wi-Fis and so forth. Now, unlike phishing attacks that defraud victims quickly, pig butchering scams build long-term emotional trust before introducing fraudulent crypto investment opportunities. Now, pig butchering derives from the Chinese expression 小猪般, which refers to nurturing a target like livestock prior to slaughter. Now, applied to fraud, it entails scammers forging deep personal connections over extended periods. They then try coax victims into sending funds to a deceptive digital currency venture. While typical phishing tactics rely on this urgency alarm, pig butchering scams hinge on persuasion and persistence. Scammers assume roles such as a confidant, an advisor, or even a financial consultant, which methodically builds trust before executing the scheme. From casual outreach and relationship building to fake profits, escalating deposits, and blocked withdrawals, each step is carefully designed to deepen commitment. Now, authorities are targeting scam networks and laundering operations, yet cross-border jurisdictional issues and encrypted communications complicate these crackdowns. Now, we have spoken about a number of previous stories, but fraud involving cryptocurrency has seen a sharp rise in recent times. Now, according to blockchain security company CertiK, who we often reference, scammers have stolen up to $370.3 million in January 2026 alone, the largest single month total in nearly a year. Of that amount, phishing and social engineering tactics accounted for about $311 million, which of course includes these pig butchering operations. So, ladies and gents, as per usual, look after your crypto, make sure TFA is involved, always DYR, and be very careful with whom you share your information with. On to the almost the last story.
Yeah, this is an interesting story because Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has bought Bitcoin again. And a lot of us have read the book. Now, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad author said this week that he picked up another whole Bitcoin at 67,000, arguing that a coming wave of money printing, what he calls the big print, will eventually lift hard assets. So he said, although Bitcoin is crashing, I bought I bought one more whole Bitcoin for 67,000 because the big print will begin when the US debt crashes the dollar. When the 21st millionth Bitcoin is mined, Bitcoin becomes better than gold. And he is all about generational wealth. His core philosophy is basically to make money work for you, not to work for money, by basically acquiring income generating assets and avoiding liabilities. So he obviously has been very successful with that book, and a lot of people have read it and also become successful. So it's interesting that he's now on the Bitcoin bandwagon as well.
Absolutely. Well,
Mm.
we are staying with crypto news, but we're also tying it in with the usual next segment, which is the Fear and Greed Index. Tell us more.
Yeah, so the fear and greed index has fallen to again the lowest level at was tied with the lowest level today, and it plunged as Bitcoin plunged more than 4%, as we said before, and that erased its gains since Friday. So Bitcoin is now trading at about 48% below its October all-time high of 126,000 and 5.5% below its 2021 bull market peak of 69,000. So the Fear and Greed Index, which measures overall market sentiment, has fallen back to 5 out of 100, indicating extreme fear. So last week it was sitting around 12. Obviously, the downturn has now bloop, back to 5. It's really, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it's only really ever fallen this low 3 times since the index launched, and including when the FTX crashed, the Lunar crash, June 2022, and actually earlier this month. So if you did watch the Hodlnots Happy Hour Hangout quite a few months ago now, Fear and Greed Index is interesting because people say this could be the bottom. It could be a good time to buy because, be greedy when everyone's fearful. But I keep saying it, but really, let's just see what Bitcoin's doing. And we're going to trade what we see. And John's going to show us what it's doing now. And a lot of coins don't care what Bitcoin's doing. So let's have a look.
Well, before we get there, ladies and gents, here, just above me,
Right.
it is the week, it is the time. All right. You've been watching in the last couple of weeks. We've been dropping clues, those visual clues. Right now, it's the time in the Q&A section down below to win that one-on-one session with either Vicky or myself. You to be eligible, you've got to list all 6 of those images. All right. We need to know what they are to be in the winning for that. The prize is worth a good couple of $100 each to spend time with Vicky or myself. So please, by all means, do that now. You've got the next couple of minutes as we ooh, alerts are going off. That's my cue. Do it now, do it now. If you want to be in the running, all right, and we'll announce the winner in due course. But for the moment, let's get into what the Bitcoin chart is looking like. Let's go. All right, so this is the day chart of Bitcoin currently, and as you can see, not the greatest of candles as we look at things. But those of you of the Hodlnots indicator, that powerful 15-1 indicator of Hodlnots, you should understand what the things are showing us. We've got all kinds of trend indicators telling us that the trend is moving down. All right, there's obviously a whole bunch of really good support in and around various levels. I'm not going to get into too much detail around that. But things are not looking fantastic. So, as mentioned last week, Monday, when we were sitting around here, I said, listen, market's going to be turbulent until Bitcoin gets at least above that 71, 72,000 range. It didn't. All right. As you can see why. There was trend indicators pointing down for quite a while. So Bitcoin's got quite a bit of work to do. Are we going to see a bit of a bounce? Are we going to see it retest some previous supports, break down below 60? We do not know. All right. We can only do what we have the power to do, and that is control ourselves and make the decisions that we want to be making. Now, if you were looking to buy more Bitcoin, add it to your bag, whether you're Robert Kiyosaki or not, if we have a look at the HODL fire indicator, let's just hide that quick. Currently, obviously, that buy tag is still there in play. This could just be some turbulence. However, if over the next couple of days we do see yet another pivot bottom print, and with a buy tag, that might be an opportunity. But again, you have to risk or do your own risk assessment and make those decisions. But we can kind of see that for the next little while, Bitcoin is indeed going to be not the happiest of chaps. And there's a fair bit of work to do before we get there. So 69, 70, 71. Ideally, you'd love to see Bitcoin over here, 72,000 in the next week, 10 days. All right. But again, we have no control of that unless you guys are multi-billionaires and you can just buy a few Bitcoin for us and just change things. Thank you very much. And other than that, there are plenty of great hodl fires that have been running for the last couple of days, weeks and months. We called kites, just FYI, on the 17th of November last year, and we've been following it since. We've also been watching a bunch of others. Also great scalping opportunities. One of my alerts is just triggered for this. So scalpers, hodl fires, you guys have the plenty of opportunities. Check the higher time frames, check what the resistance points are. But for the next week, I reckon at least, and this Bitcoin really turns around, we're going to expect some more turbulence on that side, Vicky. So yeah, fingers crossed, things do start to shape up. But in the meantime, plenty of opportunities. Tell us more about what Hodlnots in general can experience over the next couple of days.
Yes, and there are plenty of opportunities in the lodge and the den. So we have our lodge calls this week as usual, and it kicks off this week as usual at 12 p.m. UTC with the first of our self-paced calls for those doing the self-paced course. And those are for people who are busy with chapters 1 to 3, and that's at 12 p.m. UTC this afternoon or tonight, depending on where you are. And then tomorrow at 4 a.m. UTC, that's on the 24th of February, we have another self-paced call, and that's for anyone doing any chapter or any module. Jump on there at 4 a.m. UTC, and that is followed by Wendy's Lodge call at 6 a.m. UTC, and she always has a great topic. And jump on there, learn a little bit about scalping, see what's going on in the scalping world, find some coins, and again, that's 6 a.m. UTC. And then later that day at 12 p.m. UTC, we have our HODL Fire graduates call. So everyone that has graduated from the HODL Fire course, we jump on that call, and it is a chat. So we all chat together, we find coins, and like John just showed, Kite was a good one, and we actually did quite a few other ones. Power was also good. So we find lots of coins on that one for our HODL Fire graduates. And then that is followed on Wednesday by not a Hodlnot call, but if you are part of the IPO membership, you will have your call Wednesday, which is the 25th of February. And if you're also in the HODL Dot program, which is our Minute Money Masters Challenge, you will have to decide which call to get on because that is on 8 p.m. UTC, both on Wednesday at the 25th of February. And then on the 26th of February, we have our next Hodl call. So if you can't jump on the other one because of the IPO call, jump on the one at 7 a.m. UTC on the 26th. And Marcel is doing that one. So it's always great to see him doing the Hodl help call. Jump on there and he can give you his insights and a bit of help. And then we finish the week as usual on the 26th, which is a Thursday, with our second self-paced course call at 12 p.m. UTC. anyone that's doing that can jump on then. And in amongst that, we do have another Hodl Fire course going on. So the Hodl Fire course this week is Wednesday and Friday. It's the 25th and 27th, and it begins at 1 p.m. UTC. So for those of you who are in North America, basically, North America and Europe, that is the call for you because it jumps on, it starts at 1 p.m. UTC. It's about 5 hours each day, 5.5, 6, 7, 12 sometimes each day. And that's Wednesday and Friday. So we do have a busy week in the lodge and in the Hodlnots world as usual.
Absolutely. Lots of
Mm.
calls, plenty of opportunities. We had such a great bunch of students in last week's Huddle Fire course. Looking forward to them joining and adding the firepower to those calls. So looking forward to that tomorrow. Plenty of other calls within Hodl Lots. And for those of you looking to understand the Hodl Fire even better, that course is starting again, like Vicky said. So whether you're in the Western Hemisphere, North, South America, all the way Europe and South Africa. Although if you're anywhere else, you're welcome to join. It just might not be a convenient time. Other than that, lots of opportunities. Also, scalp trading, hodl fire trading, while this market is uncertain. So, what is the thought you're leaving with as we go into this week, Vicky?
Well, look, on the bright side, let's look on the bright side of things because, the world is falling, but we are getting stronger, I would think, as a race of people because, 20 years ago, it took two people to carry $10 worth of groceries, and now a 5-year-old could do it. So surely we're getting stronger.
Absolutely. All right, it's been much stronger last minute or so to go. A flurry of last minute entries. Thank you,
Yeah,
ladies and gents. This is awesome. You guys have been watching the recordings and joining us live, and this may well play off for you all. So there are a good bunch of numbers. Quickly pop them on the wheel of names. I think you've been doing that in the background. If you wouldn't mind just doing that. We're not going to mention everybody who's entered, unfortunately, but 12, thereabouts. All right, fantastic. Woo, okay, who's going to win it? You got to be in it to win it. Vicky, spin the wheel of names.
I am. I'm just putting all the names on. Just give me one more second, and we will spin the
All
wheel.
right, that's it. Bear in mind, we may well launch another contest next week where you could win one of either one-on-one with us or something else as well. We'll keep you guys apprised. But in the meantime, Vicky, take us away.
Yeah, and just to let you know, these six things were it was GameStop, which was the little game which might abandon its Bitcoin treasury, like the other person just did on the call. Michael Saylor, which is the sailboat, buying more Bitcoin. We had a Bitcoin birthday 17 years for the cake. Steak and Shake accepting Bitcoin as a method of payment. We had a gel for FTX Sam Bankman-Fried, or not get out of jail for him. And then we had that $70 million website purchase domain, AI.com, that was bought by Crypto.com for the Super Bowl. So well done. We had quite a few correct answers. We had a few, but that
Mhm.
was, thank you for entering. That was really great. And I'm spun the wheel, and you cannot believe it. Luckiest person in the world, but she enters a lot of the sorry, John, I didn't see your name on there. Do you want me to spin it again?
No.
So no. So luckiest person in the world, but she does enter all the competitions. So Donna CN, well done.
Well done again. Okay, that's amazing. Really, really cool. Ladies and gents, thanks for entering. Thanks for being on the call. Hopefully, you learned something new. We'll see you on some of the other calls during this week as well. But until next week, Monday, ciao, ciao.